Welcome, everybody. It's Saturday, and we're going to jump right into things because today we're talking about one of those things I have a hard time being not long winded about. In particular, we're going to look at some reflections I have on the achievements from the Islamic Golden Age. And thankfully, I'm sure you'll feel this is only part one, and part two will be coming on Monday. For those of you who don't know, the Islamic Golden Age was a time period of unbelievable intellectual, cultural, and artistic flourishing in a number of different Islamic empires that, depending on who you talk to, may have lasted as short as 500 years or as long as 1400 years. So, before we get into things, I want to let you know how I'm looking at this. So let's take a look at how I would see an overly simplistic outline of the Islamic Golden Age. The first phase of this would certainly have to be the life of the Prophet Muhammad himself, which was followed by the Rashidun Caliphate, led by a series of caliphs, or successors to the Prophet Muhammad, as leader of the Islamic community, the Ummah. These caliphs were Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, who were often grouped together because they were more or less democratically elected to be leaders of the growing Islamic empire. The next phase would have to be the time of the Umayyad Caliphate, which was now a familial dynasty, primarily led from the new capital of Damascus. Today, the Umayyads are primarily known for their rapid expansion of the Islamic empire, as far west as Morocco and Spain, and as far east as India, creating the largest empire the world had known up to that point. But recent scholarship has shown that there has been insufficient attention paid to intellectual work which happened during the Umayyad Caliphate. Next would be the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, another familial dynasty which replaced the Umayyad. The Abbasid Caliphate is often thought of as the time of the height of the Islamic Golden Age, and we'll talk Monday about some contributions from two scholars who worked at the House of Wisdom, created by an Abbasid caliph in their new capital of Baghdad. The Abbasid Caliphate lasts in the city of Baghdad for over 500 years, until the Mongol Empire came from the east and sacked the city of Baghdad in 1258. Unfortunately, this time marks the end of the story that some tell about the Islamic Golden Age, but we can certainly talk about other phases here due to the fact that, for instance, there was a rival caliphate, the first significant Shia caliphate headed by the Fatimids, for almost 300 years, ultimately based in the capital that they would create, Cairo. Furthermore, shortly after the fall of the Fatimid Caliphate, there was a ruling Mamluk Sultanate, which still had a ceremonial Abbasid caliph that would last in Egypt until 1517, when it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire, which would then continue flourishing and patronizing the arts and culture until the founding of the modern-day state of Turkey after World War I. Now, you may have noticed some text in this timeline pointing out different ethnic groups that lived underneath these different Islamic caliphates. This is because I reused a timeline I created for a talk I was invited to give at Clarkson University last semester by the Muslim Student Association for their wonderful event Muslims Across the World. I decided to leave those things here because one of the unfortunate assumptions that people make in the Western world is that all Muslims are Arab and all Arabs are Muslim. Simply not true. And unfortunately, this mistaken assumption is not unique in the West. There is systemic ignorance about Islam and Muslims in the West, and to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, check out this clip from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. So we want to learn about the Islamic Golden Age to learn about the Islamic Golden Age, but we also want to learn about the Islamic Golden Age to help combat this ridiculous ignorance. So here, I want to give you some outlets, some paths in order to do that. Again, I knew it was going to be difficult for me to keep this video down, given how much I nerd out about the Islamic Golden Age. So I figured one of the things I would do here in order to curb myself is just encourage you to do a little research of your own. So I've included a list here of some of the most important cultural leaders for the development of intellectual and cultural life in the Islamic world, given the interests I have in the Islamic Golden Age. Obviously, one needs to understand something about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, but other folks here, like Khadija, Fatima, and Aisha, are family members of Muhammad's, Others are Rashidun caliphs like Uthman and Ali, or Umayyad caliphs like Abd al-Malik, Abbasid caliphs like al-Mansur and Harun al-Rashid, or patrons of the arts and learning like al-Ma'mun, Fatima al-Fihri, and al-Hakim. I also wanted to give you some information that would allow you to investigate some of my favorite academic leaders for the development of intellectual and cultural life in the Islamic world. I'll point out here that in part 2 of this video, we'll go into a bit more detail of al-Khwarizmi's work, of al-Kindi's work, and Ibn al-Haytham's work. But again, please check some of these folks out. They did really, really interesting work.
Now, I know you all know how to use the internet to search for such things, but in case you want some guidance, I wanted to include some of the most interesting readings I've done about these different folks. Again, feel free to pause on this if you need to. Importantly, though, it's not just Muslims and people living in Islamic empires that just so happen to connect to knowledge and learning and culture. That is, if we're going to understand something about the Islamic Golden Age, we need to understand something about the religion itself. And here, there's no better place to start than the foundations of Islam, namely the 5 pillars of Islam. And these include things like the recitation of faith, praying 5 times per day while facing Mecca, an obligatory tax to help the poor and the needy, fasting during the month of Ramadan, and if one is able to, at some point during their life, taking the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Now, it's important to note that there were parts about these 5 pillars which naturally led to an interest in learning. For instance, praying 5 times per day while facing Mecca led to a significant interest in astronomy to be able to find the Qibla, the direction toward Mecca. Furthermore, the obligatory tax to help the poor and the needy led to some developments in mathematics. Furthermore, that there was this natural connection between the religion of Islam and the intellectual and cultural work that was done during the Islamic Golden Age, that this was something that would naturally happen, is something we find if we take a look at the Prophet Muhammad's life as well, in particular some hadith, some sayings from the Prophet Muhammad. And here I've chosen a number that focus on the concepts of justice and knowledge. One such hadith says that the search for knowledge is a sacred duty imposed upon every Muslim, that Muslims must seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, that is, knowledge is important throughout one's life. And interestingly here, we see that Muslims need to strive always to excel in virtue and truth. That is, there seems to be a connection here between the importance of knowledge for the Prophet Muhammad and the importance of goodness, of virtue, of justice. And we see this carried through here with the hadith that charity is incumbent upon every human limb, every day upon which the sun rises, that we should let no one boast over his neighbor and let no one oppress his neighbor, and that we ought to assist any person oppressed, Muslim or non-Muslim. And again, these are all sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which significantly connected the Islamic Golden Age to knowledge, but also connected that focus on knowledge to a focus on justice. And this is a particular part of the ignorance about Islam that Westerners could really stand to undermine, that they could really stand to learn more about, because we see this really sad fact that there has been a bump in Islamophobic hate crimes following the election of Donald Trump in 2016. And this should not be surprising given the stance that the Trump administration has taken on Muslims throughout the world. So hopefully this is going to encourage you to want to learn some more about Islam and some particular figures from the Islamic Golden Age in our next video. But before we get there, of course, I'm going to give you some music. Today, it's a song from the band Tinariwen with a feature by Tunde Adebimpe and Kip Malone, two members from the group TV on the Radio, and this is a song they did together called Tenere Takim Tosam.
Tenere tafut, rakana mani